So now let's talk about Gitmo. Being a public defender, did you consider that rewarding?
Senator, yes, I did, because public service is very important to me. It is an important family value. It is something that now I've dedicated my career to.
Yes. And do you think it's important to the system that everybody be represented?
Absolutely. It's a core constitutional value.
You'll get no complaint from me. That was my job in the Air Force. I was a area defense counsel. I represented anybody that came in the door, whether I liked them or not. I did my best. Is that what you did?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Now, so the American people deserve a system where everybody's represented, where you like them or not, and anybody that takes up that cause, no problem with me. You're just doing your job, and I think you make our country stronger. But there's the other side of the story that never gets mentioned when I talk about Gitmo. The American people deserve a system that can keep terrorists off the battlefield. They deserve a system that understands the difference between being at war and a crime. Do you consider 9/11, you said, a terrible, tragic event? Would you consider it an act of war?
Yes, Senator.
Okay, I would too. I think it was an act of war by Al-Qaeda and associated groups against the people of the United States. So as you rightfully are proud of your service as a public defender, and you represented Gitmo detainees, which is part of our system, I want you to understand, and the nation to understand, what's been happening at Gitmo. What's the recidivism rate at Gitmo?
Senator, I'm not aware.
It's 31%. How does that strike you? Is that high, low, about right?
I don't know how it strikes me overall.
You know how it strikes me? It strikes me as terrible.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
Okay, good. We found common ground. Of the 229 detainees released from Gitmo, of 729 released, 229 have gone back to the fight. Here's some of the notables. Former Gitmo detainee Zakir was named the interim defense minister of Afghanistan. I don't know exactly what his job is today, but during the transition, they made him the defense minister, and he was in Gitmo. Of the 5 men we released from Gitmo as part of the prisoner swap for Sergeant Bergdale, here's where they're at. Mohammed Fazal was appointed Deputy Minister of Defense. Noor was appointed Acting Minister of Borders and Tribal Affairs. Waziki was appointed as Acting Intelligence Director. Kerr, again, Acting Minister of Information, Culture, Defense. Omar was appointed as the new governor of the southeastern province of Khost. These were 5 people that we had in our control that are now helping the Taliban run the country. Would you say that our system in terms of releasing people needs to be re-looked at?
Senator, what I'd say is that that's not a job for the courts in this way. That
as an American, does that bother you?
Well, obviously, Senator, any repeated criminal behavior or repeated attacks, acts of war, bother me as an American.
Well, it bothers me. While I will not hold it against you, nor should I, the fact that you represent Gitmo detainees, I think it's time to look at this system new, folks. When 31% of the people are going back to fight to kill Americans and now running the Taliban government, we have gone wrong somewhere. Are we still at war?
So the AUMF, the authorization for military force, is still in effect. Congress has authorized the use of force against people in this way.
But do you personally believe that Al-Qaeda, ISIS-type groups are still at war with us?
I think, yes. I mean, I think we...
So we're still in a state of war with certain elements of radical Islam to this very day?
I believe that's documented, yes.
Okay. Now, what's the process to determine whether one's an enemy combatant under our law?
Well, I believe that the executive branch makes an assessment of whether or not someone is taking up arms against the United States somewhere in the world related to all of this.
Okay, so it's an executive branch function to determine whether or not this person qualifies as an enemy combatant
Well, I believe that they make a
under current law.
Under current law, I believe that determination is made by the executive branch, and the person is detained, and then the question becomes whether they are able to bring some sort of legal challenge to that
They have a habeas
determination.
right.
Yes.
Okay, so the law is that the executive branch determines if you're an enemy combatant, and under our law, you can appeal that decision to a federal court through habeas. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. Is it your view that we can hold enemy combatants as long as they're a threat to the United States?
I believe that's what the Supreme Court has determined.
Okay. Did you argue that that should not be the case before in an amicus brief?
I'm trying to think. I had 2 amicus briefs that I worked on, or 3 technically, but 2 different cases.
Well, we'll have another visit tomorrow. So
Yes.
Go back and check.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure that in your brief you argued that the executive branch should not have the ability to hold an enemy combatant indefinitely. You need to try them through some process or release them.
Yes, Senator. As you were talking, my clients, the Cato Institute, the Rutherford Institute, and the Constitution Project, made that argument and asked me to draft their brief.
Yes. Well, do you agree with that argument?
Senator, my responsibility was to make my clients' arguments, and as a nominee to the Supreme Court, that's the kind of issue. The Supreme Court did not address that issue. They, in fact, the case became moot.
Did you organize an effort to get 20 judges to file a brief with the Supreme Court on this issue?
Not on that issue, no, Senator.
On another issue?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. Did you actively go out and recruit 20 judges to help you file a brief on another issue regarding law of war detention?
Not technically.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean is that I was at Morrison & Forster, which was my law firm, in the Supreme Court and appellate group. One of the partners at Morrison & Forster was a former federal judge who wanted to make this argument and who said, I have former federal judges who are friends of mine who would like to join with me to make this argument. So I worked with her, the partner at my firm who was a former federal judge, to make...
So it was her idea to get former judges to write this,
Yes.
not yours?
Yes.
And you just helped in the implementation of that idea?
So, Senator, as a member of the Supreme Court and appellate group in a law firm, that is the practice.
Right. Now I'm asking
Amicus
you,
practice, yes.
It wasn't your idea, it was somebody else?
Yes.
Okay. So now, there are people still held at Gitmo today. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay. What system is in place regarding their future?
I am not aware of the system right now. I'm not sure exactly what you mean.
Let me tell you what it is.
Yes.
There's a periodic review process made up of an interagency where they go through the files of these folks and they determine whether or not they still present a threat to the United States or the world at large. And I think it's 6 months, maybe a year. But that goes on at least on an annual basis. And if there's a determination that this person still represents a threat to the United States, they're continued to be confined. That's the way the system works. Are you okay with that?
As a policy matter, Senator, I'm not speaking to my views. That's my understanding is that the periodic review system is an executive branch determination of whether or not they're going to continue to hold people that they.
Does that make sense to you as a way to deal with these detainees?
Senator, I'm not in a position to speak to the policy or the discretion of the executive branch regarding how they're going to handle detainees.
The reason I mention it is because in one of the briefs you argued that the executive branch doesn't have that option. That if you had had your way, the executive branch could not do periodic reviews about the danger the detainee presents to the United States. They would have to make a decision of trying them or releasing them. Is that not accurate?
Respectfully, Senator, it was not my argument. Really? I was filing an amicus brief on behalf of clients, including the Rutherford Institute, the Cato Institute, and the Constitution Project, who...
When you sign on to a brief, does it not become your argument?
It does not, Senator. If you are an attorney and you are representing a client in amicus...
Is that your position when you were in private practice? I mean, you sign on to this brief making this argument, but you say it's not your position. I mean, why would you do that if it's not your position? Why would you take a client that has a position like that? Now, this is voluntary. Nobody's making you do this.
Oh, Senator, I would refer you to the same sorts of statements that Chief Justice Roberts made when he came before the committee, which is that lawyers represent clients.
I get that. I'm not holding the client's views against you. The people you represent at Gitmo, they deserve representation. But this is a amicus brief where you and other people try to persuade the court to change policy. The policy I described is a periodic review. If the court had taken the position argued in the brief that you signed upon, we'd have to release these people or try them, and some of them, the evidence we can't disclose because it's classified, you're putting America in an untenable position. This is not the way you fight a war. If you tried to do this in World War II, they'd run you out of town. We hold enemy combatants as long as they're a threat. There's no magic passage of time that you got to let them go. So my question is very simple. Do you support the idea, did you support then the idea that indefinite detention of an enemy combatant is unlawful?
Respectfully, Senator, when you are an attorney and you have clients who come to you, whether they pay or not, you represent their positions before the court.
I'm sure everybody at Gitmo wants out. No, I got that. This is an amicus brief, and I just don't understand what you're saying, quite frankly. I'm not holding it against you because you represented a legal position I disagree with. I mean, that happens all the time. I'm just trying to understand what made you join this cause. And you say somebody hired you, but did you feel okay in adopting that cause? I mean, when you signed on to the brief, were you not advocating that position to the court?
Senator, as a judge now, in order to determine the lawfulness or unlawfulness of any particular issue, I need to receive briefs and information making positions on all sides. And
I got what a judge is all about. Listen, I'm not asking you to decide the case in front of me right here. I'm asking me to explain a position you took as a lawyer regarding the law of war, and I am beyond confused. I know what you said in your brief. Whether I agree with it or not, it's not the point. I just want you to understand that it's important for all of us to know where you were coming from. If that brief had been accepted by the court, it would be impossible for us to fight this war because there's some people going to die in jail in Gitmo and never go to trial for a lot of good reasons, because the evidence against them is so sensitive we can't disclose it to the public. That we're not charging them with a crime. What we're doing is saying that you engaged in hostile activities against the United States, that you are an enemy combatant under our law, and you will never be released as long as you're a danger until the war is over or you're no longer a danger. That's the difference between fighting a crime and a war. Did you ever accuse in one of your habeas petitions the government of acting as war criminals for holding the detainees? The holding of the detainees by our government, that we were acting as war criminals.
Senator, I don't remember that accusation, but I will say that.
Do you believe that's true? That America was acting as war criminals in holding these detainees?
Senator, the Supreme Court held that the executive branch has the authority to detain people who are designated as enemy combatants for the duration of the hostilities. And what I was doing in the context of the habeas petitions at this very early stage in the process was making allegations to preserve issues on behalf of my clients. A habeas petition is like a complaint that lawyers make allegations.
You know, I've been a lawyer too, but I don't think it's necessary to call the government a war criminal in pursuing charges against a terrorist. I just think that's too far. I don't know why he chose those words. That's just too far. But we are where we are.